Hey guys, let's talk stabby stabby. So, guys that are familiar with what I do and what I teach, a lot of the times will ask me when it comes to knives, what's the best kind of knife that I can get for self-defense? And so, first off, self-defense, this implies the fact that you're allowed to carry one for self-defense. Remember, most people put too much emphasis in self-defense on the actual attack itself, but it's three stages for me. There's the before factor, as to what happened that got you there. There's the physical altercation, and then there's the aftermath with the legal system. If you're only looking at that middle one, you're only looking at a third of what it is that you need to do in order to protect yourself. Because if you do something where you put someone in the hospital or kill them, where it may not have been necessary, well, guess what? You've still just fucked yourself in the ass. Tongue tied here, and I just turned into Mike Tyson. Because you could be spending the next 20 years in prison. So keep in mind, everything I'm about to say is specific to you having to apply it to the law. Now, in Australia, nationwide, it's fucked. You can't have anything on you for self-defense purposes. And of course, other people will say, well, I'm going to do it anyway because it's better to be, trialed by 12 than carried by 6. Well, again, you assume that everyone applies to your logic if that's the way you think. Depending on how violent the prison is, if you go there for 20 years and every single day someone's bitching getting raped at the ass, and someone else would prefer to die, well, that's their decision, okay? So, each to their own. I'm not going to get into a discussion as to which one I would prefer, but all I'll say is this. At home, I got knives to protect the fuck out of myself and the other people that live here. Out in the street, I don't carry any weapons with me whatsoever, but if you walk into my house, it's personal, motherfucker, wrong fucking house, it's on. If I get my hands on a knife, you better hope you have a fucking shotgun. So, with that being said, the best ideal kind of knives for self-defense, or in my case, home defense. Look, here's the thing, you don't need to get into this thing where you need to have a knife that's, got a blade the size of, fucking black man's dick in a porno. The ideal size blade for me is something like this knife here. Now, this is a $20 inexpensive knife. This is by the brand Fury. This is honestly one of my favorite folding knives ever, okay? For several reasons. One, it looks cool. Obviously, that's the most important thing when it comes to knives, right? But the other reason is that it has there's this checklist I have of everything that, for me, the ideal knife needs to have. And so, one of which is, as I mentioned, blade size. This is a 4-inch blade. That's good enough for me. You don't need to have a blade that's something like, 10 inches long. Because if you're stabbing in, look, let's just be realistic. If you have a knife, it's for stabbing or cutting, okay? So if I got to stab someone, it doesn't have to be a 10-inch blade for me to reach the heart, alright? A 4-inch blade will reach that, okay? Even if I bury it 2 inches in, it's still going to pop some shit, alright? Slashing as well, this will slit someone's throat, okay? If I need to stab someone through the ear, it'll do the job. If I got to stab someone through the eye, it'll do the job. Okay, I don't want to speak in so much grotesque and violent terms, but here's the thing, if you have one of these and you pull it out, you better be prepared to use it, okay, by any means necessary. And the only reason I would have this and stabbing someone with it is, of course, to protect myself. I'm not a crazy psychopath where I just walk on the street and go, you look like someone who's full of blood. And so, blade size, okay? I don't really care what shape the blade is as long as it's predominantly pointy. Something that's curved like this, yeah, you could stab someone, but as far as something that's easier to stab with, and they'll go in much smoother. Something that's dagger shaped like this is good. The Tanto blades are pretty good as well. So, like I said, as long as it's borderline sort of like even and not curved like a claw. The other thing that you need to have is a stock guard or a really good grip. So, the grip on this, I gotta tell you, it's fucking phenomenal. Like, if you want to test out and see how good the grip is, get some soap on a tap, completely cover the knife, and then go stab a tree or something like that. And if your hand slowly curves up onto the blade, then you need to get a different knife, because that knife is not going to be, so great. Because I'm sure we all know, human beings are full of blood. You stab them, blood's going to come out. Blood is pretty much as slippery as soap on the tap, and so if your hand and the knife and stuff like that is covered in blood, and you don't know exactly how many times you may need to stab someone before they'll stop attacking you. And so if you can think of a bucket filled with water, the more times you stab it, the quicker it's going to drain, okay? Same as a person. If they keep coming at me, I'm just going to keep stabbing them until they stop. It's that simple. And so if my hand's covered in blood, I need to make sure that, that I'm not going to lose the knife. Because if I keep stabbing him and then I hit them in the ribs or something like that, I don't want my hand to slide up on the blade. Especially since there's a chance that on the face of the blade, I can get cut, and if I'm already covered in their blood and then it mixes and stuff like that, if they got diseases or shit like that, I also don't want to get infected. So it still can happen, depending, like, if, I don't know, say they've also maybe got a knife or something else that I can get cut with. It's still a possibility, but I want to lessen the possibility of that happening as much as possible. So a really good grip or a stop guard and something like that is also good. Stop guard refers to the thing that's at the bottom of the blade that prevents the hand from slipping up onto it. And there's a lot of really fucking super expensive knives out there, like $300, $400, and they're shit. Like, yeah, they're made well, like they're, you know, out the front switchblades and stuff like that. Like, Microtech makes a lot of really great, flashy-looking knives, but they don't have good stop guards. And so, you know, like, what's the point ultimately if you want them for self-defense? The other great thing to have as well is something that's not shiny. So this isn't really like a super shiny blade. So if I compare this one, see, I'm shining in here, this one here, that's much more shinier. The reason why I say that this is a factor is that outside of home defense, you might live in a country where you're legally allowed to carry a knife for self-defense purposes. And so if it's a shiny day and you're stabbing someone and whatnot, if that blade gets reflected in the sunlight in just the right moment, just the right angle, well, guess what? It's going to partially obstruct your vision, and that's a factor. So something that's coated in black, I think, is much better. Or at least something that's not a shiny kind of a coat, you know, whatever it is that they refer to that as. There's so many different things out there, but so something that doesn't shine is something else that I think is a really important factor. On top of that, I don't recommend getting knives that have a glass breaker at the very bottom of the handle. So if I show you this overcompensating knife here with a really long blade, underneath here, this one's got a glass breaker. The reason why I don't recommend these particular things for carrying around, if for whatever reason we're in a struggle or something like that and I have to palm strike the very back of the knife itself, yeah, I could palm strike my wrist and whatever, but doing it so many times, if I fuck it up and get the right angle, I could hit a nerve and partially, cause my grip to loosen and do that, and I don't want to drop the knife. So I really want to hit the back of the knife, okay? If there's a glass breaker there, I don't want to puncture my hand. It's really that simple. Going back to the blade itself, the other reason why I stated as to why I don't really need a long blade and why I prefer a smaller one or shorter one is because the shorter the blade, the better control over the blade that I have, okay? The longer the blade, the more blade there is to control. So if you think of, if you go to a tree that might be in your backyard or something that you can cut, just put a little marking on there and get a knife that's about 4 inches long in terms of the blade length, and then cut it. You'll find that you'll be able to cut and make your mark much more accurately than if you had a sword, which has got blades something like 1 meter long, and then you were trying to do that. But I'm talking about if you're like trying to do it like towards the tip. And yes, if you have a sword and line up accurately and slowly, yeah, you can stab it pretty well. But my point is that doing something in terms of stabbing with a blade that's 4 inches long like this, at close range, I'm going to be able to do it much more accurately than if I've got a blade this long and then trying to stab it just as quickly, alright? And so the other thing too is that blades that have shorter blades are also much more difficult to disarm. So there's other guys out there that may think, oh, knives like this here are much more, yeah, it looks more intimidating and shit like that. However, if you put your side of your arm on the body of the blade, I can do it from here and here and here, and then press to the side, assuming I'm in the position to do so, okay? I'm not saying that this is going to be the easiest thing in the world in a real fight, fuck no. But again, I've got less of an opportunity to do that with something like this, and so if I've got the knife, more power to me, because it's harder for someone else to take the knife off of me. And, you know, there's other things that you could do with knives and stuff like that as well, but, you know, really the checklist that I have is got to have those 3 things at least. So it's got to be, I just prefer black, but at least not shiny, okay? It's got to have a great grip, it's got to have a good stop guard, and it's got to have a decent blade shape. And on top of that, the other thing is that depending on what you are doing in terms of carrying it around with you. Now, at home, this one's a folding knife, okay? So it doesn't really matter. So at home, I can have this one, with the blade out all the time. I can have it somewhere close by where if I hear someone break in, I can immediately grab it and then go and investigate. However, if you're in a country where you can legally carry a knife on you, I don't recommend carrying folding knives or anything other than a fixed blade. I want something that I can take out the quickest time possible and that I don't have to worry about folding it out like this or then pressing on a side and flicking the blade out, against using the inertia for that. It's just another step, and meaning that it's just another step in slowing me down. Excuse me. And so fixed blades are the thing that I prefer, but as long as that checklist I just mentioned, including fixed blade, if it's going to be for outside the house, but other than that, I don't care if it's fixed blade or not, if it's inside the house, just as long as the blade's going to be able to withstand intense stabbing, that's all. So other than that, this is what I would recommend as far as the ideal knife for civilians, okay? I'm sure the army have other things depending on what branch and stuff that you are, but I'm not talking about military kind of shit or anything like that. I'm talking about for civilians and what they can use in terms of protecting themselves. And so, anyway, remember, focus on that checklist. Make sure you get a decent knife. It doesn't have to be expensive. It's just, got to withstand, an intense stabbing. And focus on what the laws are in terms of, what you can and can't get away with. Because sure, you can defend yourself with a knife, but then if you wind up in prison, can you defend yourself against maybe 5 guys that want to shank you to death? So just something to take into consideration there. So thank you for tuning in, guys, and as always, stay safe.